My name is Kayla Goodwin, and my presentation is an analysis on public resistance towards social justice efforts enacted by organizations and their responses to the resistance. A system cannot fail those who it was never meant to protect. This is a quote by W.E.B. Du Bois, a sociologist, and was recently shared by the online Black media publication, The Root, in response to Breonna Taylor's death. The quote, though stated years ago, still raises a relevant topic for discussion in today's society. How can our current systems protect African Americans? Gestures large and small, like this presentation scenario with the Dallas Mavericks not playing the national anthem, as we'll be looking into today, that are continuing to raise awareness and spark necessary conversations are necessary. However, the efficacy of these types of efforts, such as will they have a lasting effect and will they not be reversed, is something to consider when enacting anything organizationally. For this presentation, we'll consider the following thesis. If organizations take actions towards social justice, they will be met with criticism and resistance. To consider the reasons behind the criticism and resistance, I will review the scenario through the lens of Spivak's resistance in public relations theory. The scenario we'll examine today is about the NBA Dallas Mavericks team owner Mark Cuban and his decision to stop playing the national anthem at the basketball games in consideration of mixed feelings about the American flag and America's history with African Americans. Cuban consulted with the NBA commissioner before the decision was made, but the decision was not publicized by the Dallas Mavericks. The team did end up not playing the national anthem in the first 13 games, including preseason and some postseason games. However, soon after the start of the regular season, the NBA required the Mavericks to play the national anthem at their games, as this is required of all teams per the NBA's policies. Of course, individuals online, including fans and others, expressed their sentiments with varying viewpoints. Before diving into the analysis, two questions that I want to consider while we're walking through this presentation is, one, was Mark Cuban's decision to not play the national anthem an effective decision? And two, why did Mark and the Dallas Mavericks choose not to publicize the decision? So as we look into Spivak's theory on resistance and how Spivak had participation with and thoughts with the post-colonial theory, we'll see how these elements play into our scenario. Resistance is described as an undoing of the dominant theorization of public relations, serving the expansionary agenda of the state market civil society hegemony by abusing the Enlightenment concepts that form the foundations of dominant public relation practice. And then post-colonialism starts to break down where these actions of resistance may stem from with the impact that colonialism has had on societies. And so this is described as a field of study theorizing the effects of colonialism in society that were once colonized, examining the interplays between representation and economic, political, cultural, and social processes that constitute and are constituted by colonial relations. So to tee up strategy suggestions for organizations looking to address both social justice and finding alternative ways for individuals within their organizations to express their patriotism, a good quote to reference first is Mark Cuban's response to the negative commentary from social media once people began to find out that Dallas Mavericks were not playing the national anthem. He says, "The national anthem police in this country are out of control. If you want to complain to your boss and ask why they don't want to play the national anthem every day before you start work." Though he later deletes this message, he's not alone in sharing these type of sentiments, as a message online from an individual expresses that even with the playing of the national anthem at sports games, it is an unnecessary formality that is often skipped in games' TV coverage. And so with that being said, as both quotes bring up points organizations to consider when addressing these types of issues, what type of strategies should these organizations try? And so they could try, one, creating a space where they can meet with players or employees to discuss their current guidelines about playing the national anthem at games and how they feel about it, particularly how the employees and the players feel about it, giving them a space to express that, and if deciding to continue to run the playing of the national anthem, determining if there are other ways that the players or employees can show their awareness of social injustice, as well as expressing patriotism in the way that makes most sense for them. So by this, marginalized voices are given a space to be heard, and post-colonial ways of operating are being examined and challenged. Two organizations can also consider the sentiments of their fans or clientele in the decision to continue or not continue playing the national anthem, such as looking at their demographics and people's sentiments online and seeing if it is mostly for or against this sort of practice. And then three organizations should also consider the variances of the broadcasting and practicing of the national anthem in other instances, such as the national anthem not always being played consistently on a television broadcast, or the national anthem not being recited in other places such as a workplace. So to close, we see how a leader within an organization tried to implement an action that was in support of his players' sentiments on the American flag, the national anthem, and how that plays into efforts around social justice. However, ultimately the decision was reversed by the organization, that being the NBA. And so to look at our thesis, if organizations take actions towards social justice, will they be met with criticism and resistance? And this is true as we see this happen in multiple instances during our scenario, including NBA leadership reversing Mark Cuban's decision, so an internal reference, and then externally people responding negatively online, such as saying that they would no longer want to be Dallas Maverick fans and that a decision like this is unpatriotic. The NBA, Mark Cuban, and the Dallas Mavericks also received criticism and resistance. Lastly, to answer the two questions that were raised during the analysis, being one, was Mark Cuban's decision to not play the national anthem an effective decision? And two, why did Mark and the Dallas Mavericks choose not to publicize the decision? Though there may not be a definitive yes or no answer for either of these, there could have been the opportunity for effectiveness, Mark to clear with the other leadership in advance within the NBA whether playing the national anthem during games could be stopped if that was an option. And as far as publicizing this decision, as we saw with the responses online, I'm concluding that the reason for not publicizing was in order to avoid resistance. Therefore, my hopes are that despite receiving or possibly receiving resistance, that organizations will continue to explore opportunities to take a stand on social justice and support individuals of marginalized communities within their organization. However, I encourage them to be very thoughtful in their communication strategy in order for the effort to be the most effective, so it can avoid being reversed like this presentation scenario. Thank you.